Hello, my name is Paul Westman and I'm here. Today I'll be giving a brief overview of what I want to do for this channel and what my goals are, and just a brief introduction of everything. First, I'm Paul Westman. Channel name is The Westman 613, and what I want to do with this channel is to discuss a hobby of mine that I've had for a very long time. It's been a passion for a while, and it's about books and reading, and just something that I haven't really been able to discuss much because very few people in my life up to this point have shared this interest with me. So I'm just going to be discussing things with this. Some of the goals of this channel is to be releasing a video or doing a stream roughly once every week. Will be at this time, which is 6:30 p.m. every Sunday. That's my plan. And I'll be going over what I'm calling a series, settings, and background discussion. What that is instead of just reviewing a book or series, what I'll be doing is talking about like the settings of these books to give you a more detailed background and understanding of where these books are. Because one thing I've found is kind of irritating is when you only learn about the setting like little by little, and you have to figure stuff out on your own on some things, and what that means is that you don't always understand just how important something is until you're going back on like a reread or something. A perfect example of this that I found is the Star Wars series. When those movies first came out, and I'm talking about the original trilogy, the episodes 4, 5, and 6, there's a lot of stuff that is hinted at or implied, and you don't necessarily understand just how important the statements are. For instance, when Darth Vader's talking about the Emperor disbanded the Senate. Well, you don't really understand too much. It's just one throwaway line, but you can't really grasp the context of how important that is, or who the Senate is, or who the Emperor is, why there's an empire or emperor and a Senate. It's just, you're supposed to imply a lot, and it isn't actually until the prequel trilogy came out that you even learned the context of what all that was and how important it was. Now, there's a lot of book series that do the exact same thing, and what I like to do is I like to talk about some of the like history and geopolitical organizations involved in each of these series of books, and that will be providing just a better context so you can be more interested in when reading these books. You can actually have a better understanding of what the setting is and where to go from there. Now, naturally, a lot of people aren't going to be seeing these first few videos, so what I'm going to be doing is after I make these streams, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to be uploading the VODs to the YouTube channel of the same name, and then eventually, if I get better at video editing, I'll be editing those into more of a standardish booktube type video. But for now, it's just going to be streams and VODs, and also going to be reviewing mostly series that are some of my favorite series, but a lot of these are going to be from more indie publishing and or self-publishing, which is a group that I think is far too underrepresented, especially in like the booktubing community from what I've seen. So you may not have even heard of these series before or these authors, but they are some of my favorites. Won't always be the more unknown authors, but that's what I'm going to be sticking to for the first few streams. Now what I've done is I've developed a little PowerPoint presentation to go along with each of these, just to go into discussions. And like I said, if you miss it, feel free to go to the YouTube video, and you can see posted there. You can leave comments if you want, talk about some of your favorite books. But this is going to be some of mine to begin with. Now, the first series I'm going to be talking about is the Starship's Mage series. It is by Glynn Stewart, excellent author, and it currently is one of the larger series. Alright. This is the initial cover for book 1. Like I said, it's a great series, and let's get into it. Alright, first genre. Like most of the series, it's going to be sci-fi or fantasy. This is leaning more into hard sci-fi, which, in case you don't know, that's sticks more to, as more of a scientific background on certain things than some of the other sci-fi. A good example of hard sci-fi would be like The Expanse, where things like gravity and how it affects the human body is more realistic. But like the name of the series implies, with Starship Mage, it also has elements of fantasy in it. This is kind of a hybrid genre that I call a space fantasy. It's similar to like urban fantasy, which is just a fantasy setting in a modern time, but this is just fantasy tropes in more of a futuristic space. So a good example of this space fantasy genre is Star Wars, in fact, because all you have to do is replace the Force with magic, Jedi with wizards, and there you have it. It is a space fantasy. Now, some of the subgenres of this initial series is about, the initial book is about a trader, it's a ship that goes through stars. And another issue that they deal with the subgenre is they deal with pirates, outlaws, and smugglers. It's one of the more subgenre things of that. However, after book 1, it transitions more into a military space opera type book, or series, I should say. Alright, next we have the series length. Alright, currently there are 15 books in the series. Next book is set to be published in January of 2026, or no, January 2025. So that's the 16th book that's going to be coming out. So it is a long series, yes. There's also a spin-off, because minor spoilers for the first book, the main protagonist, where we'll talk about him later, he kind of splits off from the crew of the ship that he's on. And the spin-off actually talks about, it's more of a continuation of the crew's story, whereas the rest of the main series is just the continuation of the main character's story. There's also 2 novellas that have been released as well. And I'll talk a little bit about the magic system. It is a hybrid magic system, which there's also hard and soft magic systems. We'll get into that in more detail later on. Alright, the basic setting. This takes place in space. the empire of humanity, because this is a future of Earth. It's called the Protectorate. More specifically, the Protectorate of the Mage King of Mars. Alright, the Protectorate is divided up into three basic divisions. There's the core, then there's the midworlds, and the fringe. I'll discuss more about what each of those are shortly. Next, we have what every sci-fi interstellar series needs, and that's faster than light travel. Or anything like, how do you go faster than light? Now, for this series, faster than light travel is only attainable through magic. That is why, really the only reason why mages are so prominent in the series. Next we have communication. Faster than light communication is conducted by what is a specialized device known as a runic transceiver array, which is actually a very large building that is constructed on planets. There is no like ship to ship faster than light communication, which is another aspect of the hard sci-fi, because communication can only travel as fast as light, but in the distances dealing with in space, that can take time. Not like some of the things where you see, like with Star Trek, where all communication is instantaneous no matter where. So this is a severe limit on communication. We'll discuss that a little bit more later as well. Next we have the mailbox. The mailbox is basically a data repository on every trading and military ship. And basically when a ship goes into one system, there are like letters or banking data or all sorts of things that are uploaded from the planet or the station onto these ships, and they're like basically date stamped, and then when they travel to different systems, that automatically gets uploaded to the new system. That's what allows the Empire to be able to function without real-time communication between the planets, because the runic transceiver array can only give live voice data through that. Alright, now more specifically we're talking about the Protectorate. Protectorate in this timeline was formed a little over 200 years ago. We haven't been given exact details on that yet, but like I said, it contains three sections: the core, midworlds, and fringe. The core being like the most developed, and then it gets progressively less developed as you get further out from the core, as most series will do. The capital of the planet, or the capital planet for the Empire, is actually Mars, not Earth. And reason being for that is because Mars is where the mages were first developed. Capital city is Olympus Mons, which, in case you aren't aware, is the largest mountain in our solar system. It's taller than Everest by a massive amount, and it is located on Mars. Alright, now as for the geopolitical situation, each of the individual systems are run by governors. Those are typically elected officials. So it's sort of a democratic system. And each system also sends a senator to act as a representative to the Protectorate Council. Now the thing about that is, I cannot recall exactly whether the senators are elected or appointed by the governors, but it does specifically state that governors are elected. though each system may have a slightly different format of doing so. Alright. However, over it all is the Mage King. And the Mage King is the ruler, the undisputed ruler, and he is the most powerful mage in the entire Protectorate. Now, since the Protectorate's only formed over 200 years ago, we're only on the third Mage King. That is, his name is Desmond Michael Alexander III. Alright. So, to more of the specifics, like I said, the core, there's 13 systems. These are the most populous, the most industrious systems. They're the ones that have been around the longest, so they have the basically the most developed. Alright. Some of these key systems are Sol, which is the system that Earth is in. We also have Tau Ceti and Legatus. Tau Ceti is one of the more important ones because they're considered one of the biggest shipbuilding industries in the Protectorate, second only to Sol, which is one of the few that has 2 highly developed planets. And Legatus is important for reasons that I will be discussing later on. Next, we have the midworlds. The midworlds are contain about 33 systems, and these are worlds that have developed to the point where they have enough industry that they are self-sustaining. They're no longer dependent upon other resources being brought in from out of the system. They can build their own ships. They have their own trade set up. They can provide their own fuel. So they're they're basically the backbone of the expanded empire. Then lastly, we have the Fringe. This currently contains about 50 systems, and these are systems that are a lot newer. They're still dependent on trade for their continued survival. Now, there are systems that once they become more established and become more independent, they can be upgraded from like a Fringe planet to a midworld. So there is it's not exactly specified like exactly where that would take place, but it is considered possible to upgrade the systems. Alright, now we'll be talking about the magic a bit more in depth. Alright, magic system is more of a hybrid of a hard and soft magic system. Now, the difference between a hard and soft magic system is a hard magic system is far stricter as to what magic is capable of. Because with a hard system, like there's specific rules that magic can do this, magic cannot do this. Whereas a soft magic system is a lot like what's shown in The Lord of the Rings, where magic is just magical. You don't know exactly what it can and can't do. It's just there. It can be used in a variety of ways that are just not known. So that's why it's typically given more of a harder soft. Now, the reason why it's a hybrid system is because while there are a lot of rules and a lot of guidelines for how magic can be used in this series, a lot of what magic is generally capable of is a lot more vague. So that's why it's more of a hybrid system rather than just a strict hard or soft system. Now, the reason why it's a hard system is more because spells are learned. You don't just use magic and bend it to your will to do whatever you want. There are specific spells. These spells are things that you have to learn. Now, one of the things that is more unique that I found in this series is that it involves a lot of runes or runic arrays, which, while they are not directly related to the use of magic, they can be used to alter and amplify the magic. So you might, like there specifically, there's a teleport spell, and with any mage can use the teleport spell if they have learned it, but if they can use like a runic array can be used to amplify the teleport spell to a much larger thing. Now the runes are comprised of what is known as a Martian runic script, which as per the series itself, quoting the series, it says, the Martian runic script defined a spell matrix in the same way that a programming language defined the zeros and ones that allow a computer to function. With 76 characters and 14 different ways to connect them, the script is complex and difficult to read. So basically, it gives limitations as to what magic can do. However, it also is vague enough that basically anything can be used for that. Now, one of the specific instances and the most important runic array that is used is called a jump matrix. That is a runic array that all the interstellar ships have, and it is used to amplify the teleportation spell that a mage can do, so that way the mage can basically jump themselves and the ship that they're in 1 light year away, which is how interstellar travel is possible, because it's an instantaneous jump. So alright, now talk a little bit about the mages. Okay, all mages, they go through mage schools. There's different specializations. Like I said, you have the jump mages, which are the ones that are trained specifically for teleporting ships, and those are one of the more popular things because, like I said, magic is the only method of interstellar travel. So jump mages are the literal backbone to the entirety of the human expansion to space. Next you have rune scribes. Rune scribes are mages who specialize in studying the Martian runic script. So they're the ones that are specifically interested in like how the magic works, how the runes affect magic, and whether or not a array of runes will actually work or not. Then there's also studies of practical thaumaturgy, and that's just more just general magical knowledge, like using force, fire, lightning. Next, mage prisons are rather important in the series because there are 2 basic prison sentences that mages can have. One is hard labor, just doing a lot of physical labor, and that generally doesn't get a sentence on somebody unless they've already had their magic taken away. The other and far more important thing, a lot of mages get sent to antimatter production. It is dangerous, it is difficult, but that is where most of antimatter is used for like interplanetary travel or any sort of just basic fuel for ships. They still use a matter-antimatter reaction to power the ships. So, now, hands are more specifically called, well, that's a simplification of what they call the hands of the Mage King of Mars. So basically, while yes, the Mage King is the most powerful mage, and his word is law, the issue is he can't be everywhere at once. So he has appointed specific mages who he trusts to be his hands. They speak with his voice. They are the will of the Mage King spread out throughout the rest of the universe. Alright, now, mages can be brought about by only two specific methods, because magic in the Starship's Mage universe is not something you can learn, is not something that anybody can learn, I should say. It is a genetic factor. So you have mages by blood, which are families that are already mages. So basically both the parents are mages, which means their kids are going to be mages. So it basically is established nobility or almost royalty. These are typically like more prominent families, and oftentimes are seen in upper echelons of the military or the government. So they're typically very well connected because, like I said, the Protectorate's been around for hundreds of years, and they've already, with the necessity of the mages, they've already been able to, they've already established that they can, or that they know people. It's all basically nepotism. Yeah. You'll see like many of a lot of the governors are also mages, and while there's no strict nobility, since it is technically a democracy, the higher class is often filled with mage families. Now, next is mages by right. Now, with that, like I said, it is genetic, but not everybody has kept track of all the mages, or whether or not it's a recessive gene that sometimes shows up in normal people. So to catch all the other mages that may not necessarily be born to these established families, all children in the Protectorate are tested at the age of 13 to see if they can actually find out if they can use magic. Right? Now, what happens is, if they found out that they can use magic, oftentimes what the government will do is they'll give the families a stipend, so that way they are better off, which will also encourage them to have more children, since they've already shown that their children have potential for being mages, and mages are the most valuable resource in the Protectorate. Another stipend is often given to unemployed mages as a way to try to encourage them to not be criminal. So they always will have the money to afford a place to stay or rent or food. So, all right. Now, there are rumors throughout this series that even mages by right can end up tracing their lineage back to what is known as the Olympus Project, which we'll be getting into shortly. This is when we get into the Eugenesis War. This is a history of the series that has not been delved into too deeply yet. It is before the Protectorate began, and often how the Protectorate started. Alright. what happened was a bunch of people got together and they formed a cult on Mars. And what they wanted with this cult was they learned that humans were capable of magic, but only through like a genetic anomaly, and that anomaly also affected like how well people could use magic. So basically what they were trying to do is they were doing like a forced or selective breeding program on Mars to try to basically reintroduce magic into humanity. The Olympus project itself is said to have lasted for roughly 80 years. But then once they succeeded, the mages who were not consenting about this entire program rebelled on them, and they ended up destroying the Olympus project. Now, that's not the crux of the Eugenicist War, but that was how the Eugenicist War ended. Because the Eugenicists' stated goals is that they were trying to create a superior magical race to rule over humanity. And a lot of people, once they found out about the program, because it was a very inhumane program to do, what they did was they saw this and they fought back. Unfortunately, the eugenicists were very well connected, very wealthy, and they were able to manage to hold off any attempts for outside forces to stop them or conquer them. But eventually, what happened was Desmond Michael Alexander I, who later became the first Mage King of Mars, once he reached a certain point in his development, he was like the strongest mage that they could have developed at the time. He just was able to use the resources that the Olympus project had hoarded inside Olympus Mons, and he was able to unleash his power and destroy the eugenicists from the inside. So that is how the Eugenicist War ended. All right. Now, after the Eugenicist War, what happened was you had a bunch of mages who had little to no understanding, or I should say, like, they were basically a new minority race amongst humans, and because of what the eugenicists were trying to do, which is through no fault of the mages alone or at all, they were bound to be like discriminated against and vilified, in spite of the fact that the mages were the ones who stopped the eugenicists in the first place. So what happened was Desmond Michael Alexander came up with the idea of the compact. Basically, it says that mages were not to be held accountable to human law. Basically, mages cannot be judged by non-mages. That means that was there to help prevent any sort of discrimination or retaliatory attitudes towards the mages. And that means that according to this compact, mages can only be held accountable by other mages. You might see areas of possibilities for corruption in that, and there are plenty of examples that can be used to how that could be a problem, but also it was one of the few solutions that could become developed in this unique situation. All right. Now, on the other side of the compact, in return for not being allowed to be held accountable by humans, mages were to use their magic to protect and serve humanity. And more importantly, one thing that they were able to develop through the research done at the Olympics project is that they were able to, that was where they discovered the runes and their ability to interface, and that is how they developed the jump matrix, which meant that with the mages and people who signed the compact, that allowed humanity to become an interstellar race. So it is only because of the mages that travel between the stars was possible, and that is why humanity basically accepted the compact, because it opened up whole new worlds, whole new star systems, whole new resources. So, like I said, the entire compact was originally developed and enforced by Desmond Michael Alexander I, and with the signing of the compact, he became the first Mage King of Mars, because he retained the throne at the Olympus Mons location, which was where the Olympus project was held. He held that as his seat of power. All right. Now, naturally, there's going to be people who don't necessarily like the mages pretty much running the empire. That's where we get the Unarcana stars. These are 15 systems that have outlawed the use of magic on planetary surfaces. They're a part of the Protectorate, because unless they agreed to the compact, mages wouldn't have taken them to different planets. But they still didn't like the idea that basically the eugenicists had won the war in their mind, even though the eugenicists were destroyed by the mages. Now, the primary system that is kind of in charge of the Unarcana faction is the core world Legatus that I mentioned earlier. That is the most developed, most populous world. It is one of the core worlds, and they're the ones that that's where the initial Unarcana movement was. Basically, they asked the mages to set them down on the planet, and then asked the mages to leave. They do allow trading and travel through the system, but magic is not allowed on the planetary surface. Yeah. And like I said, basically the reason they don't like this is because since the mages are not bound by human laws, and that essentially places the mages above the government in the Unarcana stars, and they see that as the eugenicists basically having won the war by creating a superior class of human. All right, now I'm going to talk more about the specifics of the first book of the series, just to give you more of an idea of what the series is about, and hopefully interest you in reading the series. First thing to mention is that book 1 is an omnibus. What that means is it's not one cohesive story. Instead, it is 5 novellas that have been kind of smushed together into a single book. So it does cover one overarching story, but it does also contain 5 complete smaller books inside of it. Now, in a lot of books that you might not really notice much of a difference, but some key parts that might throw you off at first, if you don't understand this when you start reading it, is basically at each of the start of the chapters, oftentimes you'll see a introduction to a character that we've already known about for a while. So it can be something that throws you off at first if you're wondering why are we being reintroduced to the main character of the story, but that's why, because it was not originally written as one cohesive book. But it is a cohesive story. It's a great book. All right. Next, the initial setting of this book is what is known as a system called the Sherwood system. Basically, it's what is often done in these multi-star system settings is oftentimes there will be like one or two cultures that'll head out to an individual system, and they might merge, or they might kind of just grow that one culture in that one area. And it's a common trope throughout sci-fi, and it continues on in this series as well. The Sherwood system is primarily based off of Scottish culture, so you'll see a lot of that. You'll see some writing with the Scottish accent in there, and that's where it starts. It jumps around to a few other places, but they don't actually visit any of the core worlds because Sherwood itself is one of the mid-worlds. But they get to that in later books. Next, I have this in here because the genre, or rather the subgenres of the series kind of varies. This is minor spoilers because, like I said, the main character in this series eventually splits, well, at the end of this book, he splits off from the main crew of the ship, which is known as the Blue Jay, and he goes off into, and his story becomes more of a military space opera, whereas the rest of the crew of the Blue Jay, they continue on a different series. That's the spin-off series that is known as Starship's Mage, Red Falcon. So if you want to continue following that, because that's more of the trader, and basically they encounter pirates, deal with smugglers, and they do become outlaws. So that's along the genre that follows, whereas book one also follows that subgenre of the trader pirate series, rather than the military space opera that it becomes. So that's just something to keep in mind. Next, I'll talk about main characters a little bit. The main character of the series is a young mage known as Damien Montgomery. Yeah, he's the primary protagonist. He just graduated from the mage schooling. He's very young. I believe he's mentioned to be like 16 or 17 in the first book. And basically all he wants is to be a jump mage and to travel the stars. Now, the other main characters of the book is David Rice. He's the captain of the the freighter Blue Jay. He's the main guy in charge of the ship. He is not a mage at all. He's just a normal human. and he's the other main point of view that we get to. All right, and the third main character that we get introduced to is Alara Steely, who is a hand of the Mage King of Mars. She's not introduced in the first chapter of the book, which is like I said, since it's an omnibus, each of the novellas is its own chapter, so there's technically only 5 chapters in the book. But she's not introduced until the second novella, which is chapter 2, and that's when she's sent to intercept the Blue Jay, and specifically Damien Montgomery. Alright, now I'm going to go through a mostly spoiler-free plot discussion, because basically it will spoil up to parts of the second novella. I said I won't get into more of the specific details of the plot later on, but basically what's going on is David Rice, he is a captain of the ship, and they get attacked by pirates right outside of Sherwood. And in order to save them, the ship Mage, he basically sacrifices himself to teleport them one last time to get into the system where the Martian Royal Navy is there to protect them. But he overextends his magic, which causes what's known as thermic burnout, and that kills him, which is a bad thing. But what makes it worse is that he is like the nephew of the governor of Sherwood. So David Rice, once he gets back into the system, he has to inform the governor. Governor says, "You're not allowed. We will no longer allow any mage to basically serve with this ship again, because he doesn't want that ship to kill any more mages." Now, like I said, mages are the only form of interstellar travel, so basically that just is a death blow to the entire ship if they can't get a mage. Now, next you have Damien Montgomery, who just graduated, but he is a mage by right and not a mage by blood, which means that he may have the same kind of power that they do, but he has none of the family connections, and he graduated along with a lot of other people, except for they were mages by blood, and they all wanted to be jump mages. So basically the kids with all the connections, they got all the posts, and that left Damien looking for a place where he could be a jump mage and basically fly out and explore the universe. So Damien gets connected with David Rice, and because they're both desperate, David hires Damien onto his ship, and then they start traveling out. Now, as they're flying out, Damien notices that there's some strange markings on the rune matrix or the jump matrix of the ship, and how it kind of doesn't look like it's as efficient as it could be, because Damien, while he specialized as a jump mage, he's also a very talented rune scribe as well, so he can see the runes and understand their purpose. And naturally, when he's examining the jump matrix, he's noticing all these small inconsistencies. Then after they jump and they start going on their trading run, what happens is the pirates ambush them again. So one specific thing to note is that the reason why the pirates keep specifically targeting David Rice is because he was directly involved in the death of one of the basically pirate overlord's son. So that means that they all have a grudge against him. That's why they're always harassing him. So anyway, as this pirate is attacking the ship, the Blue Jay, Damien realizes that these parts of the jump matrix that have been showing like inefficiencies, what they're actually doing is they're preventing any sort of magic other than teleportation from being amplified by the matrix. So he alters the jump matrix. He manages to change a few things, and then once he does that, he's able to use the jump matrix of the ship to amplify all of his magic, and using that, he's able to destroy the pirates, and then they continue moving on. The problem is that any sort of modification or experimentation with the jump matrix is highly illegal. So when they reach their next stop, Damien spends some time on the station, and while he was there, the people from the shipyard, they send for a mage to examine the ship to make sure that it wasn't damaged too badly from the pirates, and they examine the jump matrix as they're supposed to, and they see all the modifications that he did. Now, since normally what happens with the modifications when someone tries to modify a jump matrix is that the ship blows up, or it gets disintegrated, and basically it kills everyone involved. So Damien is immediately arrested and sent to prison. That is when the Mages Guild contacts Handel Laura Steely to come in to administer punishment for this crime of attempted murder, even though Damien knew that he wouldn't be killing anybody. So that's where I'll leave it, because next part is the Blue Jay breaks Damien out of prison, and then they go on the run from the law. So they become outlaws, still trying to make some money by picking up trade goods or shipments and deliveries, while simultaneously running from both the law and the pirates, who all are going after them. So that's the series. Well, that's the first book. It is one of the better series that I've read, and it's one of my favorites. I really enjoy a combination of both the space and the fantasy elements. So that's something that hybridization of it is something I've always enjoyed. And that's going to be pretty much it for now. So next stream I'm going to be doing, it should be next week, 6:30 p.m. on Sunday. And what I'll be discussing is the Star Kingdom series by Lindsay Buroker. That's another one that I have always enjoyed. It contains quite possibly one of my favorite protagonists of all time. So, I'll see you then.